What's something people thought you were wrong about that turned out to be true? In 6th grade chemistry, a teacher asked us what element was a gas that was lighter than air and extremely flammable/explosive. I grew up on science because of what my dad does for a living, and Bill Nye. I knew about the Hindenburg, and so I was really proud of myself when I raised my hand and said hydrogen. The teacher laughed at me and said that no, it was helium, and the entire rest of the class proceeded to laugh too. Almost 3 decades later, I work in a lab now. Caught a buddy's girlfriend cheating on him. I saw her at the bar with some other dude. It was pre-cell phone era, or I would have grabbed a pic so he'd believe me. Because thing is, when I told him, he didn't believe me. I know he just didn't wanna believe it. But yeah, it was hurtful on all sides. But he stayed with her, and what's worse, he told her what I'd said one day, not in a did this happen at the time way, like weeks, months after it had happened. Oh, can you believe it? Bill told me once he saw you at the bar with some other dude, but you'd never do that to me. And of course she said no, and they laughed about it. Anyways, that was kinda the end of my friendship with them. They got married a couple of years later, then divorced a couple of years after that when he caught her cheating on him. My bakery used a much higher voltage of electricity than a residential house. The giant mixer bowl's electrical socket started shorting plus sparking. I used a broom handle to flip the switch to off plus got an electrical shock. A decade later, my son told his primary school teacher this take. She sneered plus said wood doesn't conduct electricity. In other words, your mum's a liar. Still wonder about that idiot. And if she's the type to shelter under a tree during a thunderstorm, wood is not the best conductor of electricity, but if the voltage is strong enough, it will conduct, as will most materials. Our water usage at work went up a lot. They checked all the toilets, sinks for leaks, couldn't find anything. I mentioned that it seemed to coincide with the new water cooler system installation. Maybe that should be checked. They basically laughed at me. That stupid water system never worked good, and the guy came in 3 different times and said it was just the filter. Every month it needs changed. Didn't seem right. Finally a different technician came in, and result was it was never installed correctly. I asked, could that have anything to do with the increased water usage that started when this got installed? He smiled. I wondered if anyone caught that. Yes, the valve was not correct and water has been running for 5 months. If only they had listened. Total redemption. When I was in middle school, I took a pretty hard tumble trying to catch a football in gym class. I bent my hand and fingers weird, and I was suddenly in a lot of pain. I have a pretty high pain tolerance, so when my mother came to school, because I went to the nurse's office and asked to go home, she took one look at my hand and my tearless face before telling me it looked fine to just put some ice on it. Despite my protests that it hurt pretty bad, she told me to stop trying to get out of class and left. I shrugged it off and went back to school. Well, she comes to pick me up after school, and once I get into the car, she gasped and grew very pale. My hand had swollen up to 2 times its original size and was pretty bruised up. I should been crying or upset, but I was honestly pretty smug, as it's not often the child gets to prove the parents wrong. She proceeded to get a bit angry with me because I should told her if it was that serious, and she didn't know. A couple stops later, and I had a pretty pink cast for a couple months. Broke my hand. My mom never doubted me whenever I called her from school again. This is a bit petty, but whatever the context. I've been obsessed with the weather since I was a small kid, like 3 or 4 years old. Obsessively researched it. Can reasonable estimate the weather for the coming days by looking at the clouds. Loads of cool wild weather facts, but also know enough of the regular meteorology to bore the pants off of anyone at a party. Anyway, I'm also a writer, and when I was 13 I wrote a story that featured a violent winter storm. Now, I'm Irish, so our winter storms aren't really on the same level as the setting in my story, which was somewhere in northeastern Canada, where it gets a bit more severe. In this storm, I featured lightning. I had deduced that lightning would be possible in violent blizzards, because it's the exact same concept as a thunderstorm, just occurring where we can see it, rather than way over our heads. So I featured the lightning, and it was awesome and very dramatic. Both of my parents and my teachers told me I was wrong. They told me that lightning could not occur in a blizzard because it's not a thunderstorm. I insisted. I beseeched. I tried to explain. Nobody would budge, and for years it was constant. Every time the subject of snow or blizzards or lightning came up, I'd get it. I knew I was right, but could I persuade these people? Not a chance. Fast forward like almost a decade and a half. I'm now living in Scotland, and it, along with the rest of the UK, is absolutely battered by a freak storm blown in from Siberia. Extreme weather conditions, highest warnings, whiteouts, a blizzard lasting 3 days. My partner and I, living in a fairly remote village at the time, was snowed in for a week. And do you know what the entire UK experienced because of the severity of the storm? Thunders now, the entire sky lighting up white and blue with the lightning from the blizzard. Dramatic footage was shown on the news. Smugly, I inquired in the family chat if anyone had seen the thunders now lately. Even sent a clip shot from my own kitchen window. They left me on read. I was in the passenger seat at a Carl's Jr. drive-thru with a friend. He asked what I wanted, and I requested the fried zucchini. He puts half his body through the window to the voice box and goes on, "This my friend here thinks you have some kind of food I know you don't have, so I'm just going to say it for laughs, because you will get a kick out of this. She wants fried zucchini," and starts laughing. Well, guess who ends up eating fried zucchini? I expressed my worries that my toddler had a speech delay to a formerly trusted family member. I was told no way, not possible. How could you even think that something could be wrong with your own child? She picked on me for this every time she saw us. I followed my gut to get him evaluated, despite her protests and lack of support. Turns out he did have a significant delay and required therapy services for over a year to catch up. Keys locked in your car? Call a locksmith, not a tow truck. Tow truck service cost about $50. They'll use a Slim Jim and are not responsible for any damage caused. They will cause damage, easily $100 worth, and if it's power locks, several $100s worth. If they damage the locking mechanism and the window opener / closer, it could be as much as $1,000. A properly licensed, bonded and insured locksmith cost about $125. Overwhelmingly they cause no damage. However, in the rare event they do, the bonded and insured part kicks and they pay for the damage. My husband told me that I was a baby about my IUD insertion and insisted that it wasn't painful, that my concerns about entrusting a stranger to shove a foreign object into my body were paranoid. I listened to him because really, the info you'd find online is overwhelmingly positive. Long story short, the provider placed it wrong, didn't check / fix it. When I asked her to, I spent 4 years in pain that I eventually got used to. It expelled halfway out my cervix. Had to get it yanked out at the ear. That's when I was told that copper IUDs are notorious for breaking inside the uterus, because it broke inside me. The cherry on top, the female Gino with 3 kids I saw to get the broken piece removed, told me that cervixes don't really feel pain, and that I didn't really need to remove it. Goes without saying, I was in severe pain for 2 weeks straight before this appointment. Tons of women came out with their stories about lawsuits over IUDs, how they got pregnant with an IUD, stories similar to mine, and how women should really be offered anesthesia or pain pills for this procedure. And when my husband was surprised to learn about the pain I endured, I reminded him, "You called me a baby and everyone else told me it was all in my head," which is why I didn't talk about it. The 2008 financial crisis. I was mocked for pointing out that housing price increases had outrun wage increases for years, and that a major correction was in the cards. It might level off for a bit, but nah, it won't go down. I would point out that the 3-year and Helic combo was new, and when they came due, there would be a bloodbath. They did. There was. I do not know what is driving the current housing price increases, but we know it is not a shortage of supply, and not a natural outcome of wage / purchasing power growth. It is artificial, and will correct again. My wife and I were invited to a get-together with some friends at the beach. I was packing my jacket, as I thought it would get cold later with the ocean breeze. My wife made me feel like a fool for this, telling me it was unnecessary, basically calling me dumb. I brought it anyway, and lo and behold, come nighttime the ocean breeze picked up, and I was freezing. I go to my car to get my jacket and it's gone. I knew I had brought it, so where did it go? As I walk back to the group, I notice the wife of one of my friends wearing a jacket. I go up to her and she admits she grabbed it out of my car. I hint at how cold I am, how my wife made fun of me for bringing the jacket, but I was right in the end. She finally got the hint and gave me my jacket back. And then I discovered a giant smudge of s'mores on the chest of the jacket. I was mad, but she ending up giving me $150 for a new jacket, so ultimately I couldn't curb my enthusiasm. I had vivid memories of my mom had long hair and wore it as a ponytail when I was 3 or under. She denied it, claiming to have had short hair all of my known existence, which is true aside from those few memories. My dad casually confirmed my mom's claims. Family photos appeared to corroborate it. Ergo, I came to the natural conclusion that I must have been the victim of an accidental toddler swap at some point and lived with that knowledge for a decade or so. And then a few years later, grandma asked my mom if she is willing to talk with one of my older cousins on the lessons she learned when juggling family time and schooling. Like the year where my mom was so busy with things that she opted to skip haircuts to prioritize childcare and grad school. Vindicated and stopped looking for another kid around my age who could have sworn their mom had short hair at some point. When I was in elementary school, we had to find a fun fact about a random animal and tell the class about it. Me being the most outdoorsy kid who loved animals, going to zoos and watching Crocodile Hunter with my dad whenever it was on, decided to pick the platypus as my topic. So the time comes for my big speech and I'm standing in front of the class all excited and whatnot, talking about platypuses with my heart on my sleeve. I was rattling off facts so passionately you'd have thought I was giving the goddamn Gettysburg Address of platypus facts. I'm talking like platypus are mammals that lay eggs. They don't have a stomach and some are venomous, yada yada yada. That's when the teacher stops me and says that I'm wrong, the platypuses are not venomous at all. She said I made it up and scolded me in front of everyone a little. I was a kid, so I was heartbroken. Old hag even gave me a bad grade. Went home defeated and unsure of myself until I saw a rerun of the animal show I had watched that reassured me I was right. Male platypus have venomous spurs on their hind legs. Eat poop, Mrs. Whitaker.